Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the country, in the world, and whether you're watching this on replay or not. We are trying an experiment today, and producer Martha and I are sitting here like this, going, "Well, it should work," because she is behind the scenes. She's not always here because she's very, very busy doing all sorts of things. But today she is behind the scenes, and we're going to try at 1080p. Now, we're not 100% sure what effect that will have, but it should mean that you can see my wonderful unshaven look and see my screens behind me in more detail. Oh, my little logo in the background there is not set up. I'll fix that. But if there's a problem with the stream, can you let us know in the chat? It should be okay. I mean, I'm actually broadcasting on a 2.5 gigabyte fiber connection because I live in the Dallas area, and so I get all sorts of benefits from being in the metropolis. But if it's a problem, just let us know. I don't know if we can swap midstream, but hopefully we can. I've put a few things up saying hi from everyone. Boyan is also in the background as well. Boyan, I'm going to be talking about some of Boyan's stuff on Tuesday, the next stream that comes up. We're streaming every Tuesday and every Friday now until the end of April. 30 webinars for 30 years of Rad Studio. Well, actually Delphi, but what is become Rad Studio in Delphi now. So 30 webinars for 30 years of it. And Boyan's stuff is incredible. It's not directly Delphi stuff, but he's got some Delphi components as well. But we're going to be looking at some gadgets and gizmos and things like that. And I've found the sword fighting robot. I've got to assemble him, but I was looking for something else, weirdly enough, and I found him. I'm going to skip through the hellos to everybody very quickly because we want to get to the topic. But we've got people from Santa Clara and from the Netherlands, which is actually quite topical because if you scan that QR code there, it will take you to DelphiSummit.com, which is the web page for the 2025 Delphi Summit. It is going to be amazing, probably the biggest Delphi event in Europe this year and maybe for many years, because obviously COVID caused a lot of problems to a lot of groups and things like that, and people stopped going to live events, but they've gradually come back. But the Delphi Summit, this one here, is amazing. Last year I went there, it was fantastic. I'm going again this year. If you're a Delphi person and you're able to, and I appreciate that's not possible for everybody because their geographic location and their finances and their work schedule, but if you can make it, go to the Delphi Summit. It's just outside the Netherlands. So in Amsterdam, actually, it's in the Netherlands. It's just outside Amsterdam, which is an amazingly beautiful location. My wife and I went there and we traveled around the canals and things like that. I've been to Amsterdam many times over the years. I used to be a DJ and I've DJed over there and things like that as well. But it's really definitely worth going. It's from the guy that wrote this book here, the Pioneer and Simplicity book. Marco G is the G from GDK. Great tech partners. So anyway, that's enough about that for now. Everybody's saying it looks good, apparently. So that's excellent. My 1080p. Someone says, rather unwisely, Terry, you look great. No, I didn't ask that. I said, does it look clear? Does the picture look clear? I don't care if I look great. I am what I am. You know, I've long ago resolved my any issues I could ever have about my appearance and things like that. Wally says hello, and David says nice and clear. So producer Martha, you can rest easy. It looks like it's going okay at the moment. So not in, just the resolution. So Doug says it looks good, and then he wanted to clear it. That's it. So if this works out, and I will review this afterwards, but if this stream works out at 1080p, then we'll be doing a 1080p from now on, because that's where we want to be. But it's good stuff. So Coders is asking a question which I'll come back to later because I'm not quite sure what it is. So who have we got? Italy, Montreal, Canada, Turkey, just absolutely everybody from everywhere. Knut, hello Knut from Norway, really regular viewer. So thank you for joining, Knut. I noticed you weren't around last time, or if you were, you didn't say hello in the chat. So I thought, well, I hope he's going to be around because I kind of get used to the people that turn up quite regularly. Algeria, Istanbul, fantastic. And as Patrick says, because I met Patrick, I think it was sort of first time at the Delphi Summit. He said the summit was big and the GDK team is really great. Absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of really good tech partners. There's Softicom and many others who work in that kind of sphere. But GDK, they put this summit on, and Softicom actually helped sponsor it as well. But GDK put it on, and we kind of hijacked it by being Embarcadero, because when we turn up, people go, "Oh, it's the dude from Embarcadero," and you know, people want to talk to us. But if you want to come to that summit, I will be there. I'll be there all day, every day. I think I'm doing a couple of talks. I'm not sure if I'm doing the keynote this year, but Marco Cantu will be there as well. We haven't quite finalized exactly who's coming from Embarcadero, but I'll definitely be there. Come and say hi. I will be looking like I do here. Everywhere I go, whenever I'm working, I'm wearing this top. So if you see a tall, fat-looking guy with bald hair and the Embarcadero top on, it's probably me. Salut Einstein, one of my other French people. Tous to Frederick, sorry, in Germany. Hola Isabel in Mexico, and Dzień dobry to Conrad in Poland. I'm going to run out of languages I can say hi in a moment. We haven't had anybody from Korea this time. Yeah, and or Japan, but both of those I know do follow along. And West Virginia, well, I can say hi to people from West Virginia. That's easy. Rick says West Virginia. Yeah. So anyway, look, I don't want to do too much saying hi to people, because people do get a little bit tired of it after a while. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Coders, I'm not sure what your question is, but I will come and deal with it, okay, later. So what I'm going to do is do the presentation first, because generally during the presentation, I'll probably answer people's questions. One thing I have to say, if you're new to these webinars, I can't always look at the questions and do the presentation at the same time. And the reason is that I have a screen over to this side that you can't see, which is set up so that it is a good resolution for broadcast. And also it's uncluttered. It doesn't have all sorts of shortcuts on it and things like that. So I can't always see your questions. So if we get to the end of the presentation, I'll answer any questions. JP, who is in the chat, he's our newest MVP, JP Mugas. I call him JP. He calls himself J Peter, but it's JP to me. He worked on a really great project called Taurus TLS, which I'll put a link up for later if I remember. If not, we'll talk about it another time. And whilst we're talking about good MVPs, there's another one, Darian Miller, who's also an excellent MVP, runs a lot of very good forums. If you go to Embarcadero's website and go to the thing that says resources, there's a thing that says community. Click on there and you'll see Darian's groups. He runs, forgive me if I get this wrong, Darren, but I think it's Telegram and Discord groups. He also collects a lot of the jobs together and things like that. So when there's a Delphi job, he tends to repost that. Really useful MVP, and JP, another one as well. And in fact, there's probably a few of them. Patrick, of course, who is here as well, is also an MVP, and he was last year's Spirit of Delphi Award winner. Where can we score an Embarcadero shirt? Actually, we've had a debate about this internally in the company. We do get people ask us for Embarcadero swag, which we don't really do, and there's a couple of reasons why, but we're thinking about doing it to either give away to people and or sell, because somebody said, well, even if you couldn't, justify giving them all away because of the amount of people around the world. There's like 3.5 million people. It would be good to have an official store. It is something we're looking at, and it's harder than you would expect, because you think, well, just open up one of these online stores and put some swag in. But actually, there's problems with trademarks and clearance and things like that. And we're owned by Idera, who get to call the shots. So where can you score a shirt? The answer is nowhere at the moment, but I'm looking into it. Good idea. Greetings from Venezuela. Oh, by the way, if you go to the Delphi Summit up there, you'll find a lot of people will give away T-shirts on there. Who else we got there? Spain. Hey, Darian, says Rick, what's up? And here's Patrick, as usual, doing his usual thing. There's the community links. And he says, oh, it's an empty page. Oh, it is? Oh, it shouldn't be. Maybe it's some kind of translation problem. You're looking at it under French mode, are you? That's it. Oh, look, my laptop behind me has rebooted. Okay, so look, let's get on with the presentation so that people can ask their questions. Let me just run a few things here. So, one of the strengths of Rad Studio is, and in fact, I'm just going to pull this over here so I'm a bit closer. One of the strengths of Rad Studio is the we have a bug on the website, send an email to Ian. Okay, good, thanks. Yeah, I fix everything. I'm in charge of all sorts. The strength, when Delphi first came out 30 years ago on the 14th of February, which is why we're doing this 30 for 30 webinars, one of its real key strengths, almost from the very first moment it was released, was its ability to link to databases. And it's one of the things we're very good at. Nowadays, and of course, when it first came out, it was actually Windows 16-bit executables. And we're going to talk about SQLite in a moment as well. But the fact that Delphi could really make talking to databases very simple, the code to do it was actually straightforward. And that's what it could do. It could do that with very little or no code. It used data links and things like that. Nowadays, we've expanded out from Windows. We went from Windows 16-bit to 32-bit, and then Windows 32-bit to Windows 64-bit. And now we, of course, go to Linux, we go to Mac OS, we go to Android, and we go to iOS as well. So it's broader now. And yet you can still connect to databases from those apps. As someone says in the chat there, some of the technology to do that depends on what technology you're using, because it used to be there was only one methodology for connecting to databases, and that used to be called the Borland database engine back in the days when we were Borland. And we kind of evolved from there a couple of times. Companies got sold a few times. But really, there's still people hanging around who used to work for Borland. I work with people who are ex-Borland staff. It was before my time. I was a user before I worked for the company. And the Borland database engine did its thing, and it could talk to Paradox. And then you had this other database technologies that come on, lots of third-party libraries. But one of the big things for us was that we purchased a thing called a DAC, which is data access components, and we renamed it to FireDAC and use the FireDAC components nowadays. They're probably the most common ones. But today, I'm going to show you a bit of FireDAC, but also a bit of IBX, Interbase Express components, and talk about the other databases as well. We are going to talk about SQLite, and in fact, I have a specific webinar in 3 weeks' time about SQLite and the differences between Interbase and SQLite. There's more than one way to have a database on mobile, and we'll talk all about that next time as well. And he said, well, this question says, I hope you can talk about how to connect to the MongoDB Realm database. Yes, we can. We're not actually could probably do it in this webinar, although I will cover it because the components I'm using, I've got 3 demos. One of them will actually allow you to connect to any database, and you just simply change a couple of settings. So it's fairly easy to do. And Haito, who's a regular, says, I used to use Delphi and Paradox a lot in the end of the 1990s. Actually, a lot of people did. And in fact, there are some quite well-known packages out there that still use the BDE and Paradox, which I definitely do not recommend. We deprecated the BDE many years ago because it just simply won't work on modern Windows. But it, you can still download it, and it's okay, but it's not. I wouldn't recommend, using it. So let's get rid of that QR code so that we've got a nice clean screen here. And then I am going to share my screen. Now, forgive me, because as I've said before, it means that I cannot see what's going on here. Let me just size this down like this. And I think now I can, yeah, okay. So I do apologize, but I should have 3 screens. I've actually got 2 screens, but I keep forgetting that I should have on the screen. Right, so let me share this screen. And now, and so you can see me down in the corner there and the presentation. I'm going to hide myself from the screen so that all you have is the presentation. Let me turn my camera off. There you go. So you should still be able to hear me. Let me know in the chat if you can't, because that means I've probably done something wrong. In the 90s, we built a Delphi app in 3 days that took 6 weeks in Visual Basic. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's one of those things. Okay, so let's go to here. 1 second. And drive my presentation. I told you there's a little bit of organization to do because I have, so if you could see my desktop, and I will publish it in the future when we do the birthday webinar, we'll talk about how we do this. Right, so this webinar today is part of the 30 for 30 webinars. And so we've got 30 webinars planned. The one on February the 14th is a specific birthday or anniversary one because this year marks the 30th anniversary of Delphi, the release of Delphi. And that was on the 14th. And so that webinar is going to be special. We're going to get some old faces from the good old days of Borland, hopefully. We're persuading a few people. But also we're going to have a little bit of nostalgia and go through some old versions of Delphi and see if we can make them work still. And a few other things as well. But today's webinar is called The Best Embedded Database for Your Mobile Apps is Free. And that's a fact. And I'm going to tell you some of the different ways that you can get it for free. And depending on which version you've got, the extent to which it can work, for free is quite extensive. But if you've got, say, professional or the CE version, then there are some restrictions. But I'll talk about those in a moment. Okay, so let's go through the slides. If you don't know who I am by now, and you really should, but if you're not a regular viewer, then maybe you don't know who I am. And my name is Ian Barker, and I'm the Embarcadero Developer Advocate. That means I just talk about the benefits of our products and also listen to people like you. And if you've got complaints or if you've got some suggestions, or if you just want to tell us what you're using on your projects, if you need a little bit of help or something like that, you can email me. I don't give technical support. I can give you some advice and I can put you in touch with people that have got the answers. But my role is really, just to reach out to people and hear what you've got to say, good or bad. Hopefully good, but even if you've got something bad to say, email me. It's best to email me. I am very, very busy. I get many hundreds of emails, and I will reply to you. We're not a black box like some companies. Like, if you don't like something about Microsoft Windows, who do you email? It's a genuine question. Who do you email? The answer is you don't know, because I don't know. I know I can reach out to some people at Microsoft. But Embarcadero, we make an absolute point of giving you our email addresses, and that includes the PMs, the people that actually manage the content of the product, and also myself as well. So if you want to get in touch, feel free to email me, ian.barker@embarcadero.com. The slides for this, and any links in these slides, so I don't think there are any today, but anything, including the replay, will be available at this URL. So it's tinyurl/best mobile database. If you go there at the moment, just go to the product page, because we're creating the replay, so we can't actually have it there. It's like a chicken and the egg situation, so I have to show the link in here. But if you do go here in later on today, and actually probably Monday at this moment, all the slides that you see and all the demo and all the rest of it will be available there. Okay, so just to recap what I was saying when we started, the real superpower of Delphi is our ability to handle data. And very first version of Delphi, when I was working as a IT director, I think at the time, but I was a developer. I was working on various projects. And I remember Delphi being released, and I saw a magazine article of it, and it talked about how you could write these apps and design the screens visually. Visual Basic was around, I think, at that point, but people didn't tend to use it quite as much as they had. And it was a revelation. But the main revelation of Delphi as it was how good it was at handling data. And I mean any type of data, almost any database in the world. We can connect to it really easily. If you've not tried it before, I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment with some examples. But it's really not difficult to create some straightforward applications that do some fairly powerful things. Now, my demos today are fairly simple, but they give you the idea, they give you the gist. Because if I go into too much complexity, then you go, don't understand it, move on. But I want to show you, something functional that actually does do something. With FireMonkey, which is, if we're talking about embedded databases for mobile, then we need to talk about FireMonkey or FMX. You can set the data up using links that are visually connecting one set of components to another set of components. So the data to what you can see on the screen, the edit boxes and labels and things like that. We call that visual live bindings, or just live bindings. And I'll talk about those in a moment. But with live bindings, in theory, you could create an app that doesn't have any code at all and can work with a database. It's pretty outstanding. What sort of databases can you use with your apps? Well, any desktop, any server, any mobile device. There are some caveats. I'm going to talk about those after my demo, what you can and can't do, because different versions of the product, so professional, the community edition and professional are largely the same. The enterprise version can do more, and the architect version can do more as well. But really, if you go for the enterprise version, then anything you see on that screen there at the moment, you can talk to. So you can talk to MySQL. Yes, you can. You can also talk to SQL Server, so Microsoft SQL Server. Yes, not a problem at all. It will work without any difficulty. Oracle, yes, and actually we were talking to Oracle before anybody else really was able to create desktop applications that of the visual type that we specialize in, that we're really good at. We beat everybody to the drop on that, and we're able to talk to Oracle databases long before anything else. How do I know? Because I was one of the guys that was writing apps to do that. And that included things like Infomix, which is a big sort of corporate database, Teradata, which is another one which deals with massive amounts of data, not your average Joe Public kind of database, but big corporate ones. PostgreSQL, which is harder to say than it is to actually connect to using RAD Studio and Delphi. Yes, you can talk to Postgres, which is how most people describe it now. PostgreSQL, it's very easy to do, and it will work out of the box, certainly for enterprise, the enterprise versions of RAD Studio, but even professional, you can talk to local databases. MongoDB, someone asked about, can you connect to MongoDB? Yes, you can. You can connect to MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database, which is one of the ways that we talk about it. And of course, the other database you can talk to is SQLite or SQLite. Okay, but the thing about SQLite is it's very, very popular. It's open source. It's widely used around the world. But just a little while ago, I can't remember the exact timing, but they introduced a charge for encrypting the database. That means that if you choose SQLite on your mobile device, if you want to have the data encrypted, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then you actually have to pay a fee for SQLite. Now, we can talk to SQLite using our technology, and you can also have it embedded if you want. And if you pay the SQLite team for the additional encryption, so it's free, but if you want the encryption, you pay. Then there's a little property you change in FireDAC, which is what you're seeing at the moment, and you can then embed a encrypted SQLite database. So that's interesting. Free SQLite, but actually has got a bit of a restriction there. So what you really want is to answer this question, which is, do you want to have a fully embedded zero configuration database? In other words, you don't have to go into the mobile app and set up any settings or anything like that. You just want it to work out of the box and you know, to be ready to go on your mobile device. You can use it in your mobile apps and it'll just work. So in other words, you can just have it embedded. You deploy your app, and the app deployment will actually then send up the necessary libraries included in your app, embed the database inside the app's working space, which we'll talk about in a moment, and it just works. And I'm going to show you it working in a moment. It's better than SQLite. And the reason is that you can actually use Interbase, which is the product I'm talking about here, for free on mobile, and it will include encryption. There's two types of encryption as well. So, and we'll get to that after the demo, but the first type of encryption really is the actual database encryption itself. So the data is encrypted at rest. Now, why is that important? Because if you live in somewhere like Europe, there are laws requiring you to have your data encrypted at rest. And in fact, in the USA, where I'm based, as you can tell, I got my strong American accent. Just kidding. But I'm based in Dallas, and so I'm subject to US law, and there is actually some requirements for data handling in a safe way to encrypt the data at rest. And what that means is that the data needs to be safe from someone just taking it off of your mobile device, because they can do that. They can write, you know, certain apps or use certain tools to get your database off of that app, off of that cell phone or that mobile phone, and put it onto another machine, and then open it with the tool and read the data. But with Interbase, it's encrypted at rest. Additionally to that, there is the ability to embed user authentication in the database. And the embedded user authentication means that even if they can get that data and they can connect it to a database console, which I'm going to show you in a moment, they still cannot actually log on to the database because it treats itself like a little mini server, because the user authentication is embedded in the database. So even if they were to somehow get the password to decrypt that data, if you've also enabled the encrypted users or the secure users in that database, it won't do them any good. They still can't get on. So, you know, it's doubly doubly secure. This is not something that SQLite can do. It can't do that. Okay, feel free to tell me if you can that you can do that, but not for free. You can do it with some of their add-ons, which are paid. They are not terribly cheap, so we do have a little bit of an advantage here. But more importantly, as it says on the bottom line there, you probably have a free license for this already for the controls. Okay, so let's stop that screen presentation, take a quick look at the questions that we've got, and then we'll do a demo. So let me just click back onto my screen presentation and just make sure we haven't been asked any questions. So, actually, here's a question, which is, does someone know Nexus DB? Actually, we work very closely with the Nexus DB guys, and I'm going to do a presentation of them, their stuff later. They have a really good security product as well called Nexus. I think it's called QA Suite or something like that. I do apologize for them. They are going to the Delphi Summit. So, if you're going to the Delphi Summit, you'll meet these guys. They're the two of them based in Australia, and they're traveling all the way over there. And while we're at it, hello, Diane. I've met Diane before. She's based in Brazil. She's an excellent presenter. Really did an excellent job. So, hi, Diane. I follow your stuff quite avidly. You're a pretty smart person. Einstein says Sybase. I actually don't know about Sybase. I'll find out. We'll see. Nigel says, can an embedded DB on a mobile share data with other mobile users? Actually, it depends on the license you've got, because that's not quite how the embedded DB is supposed to work. But you can set it up to be a server, but you need a specific license for that. I'll need to find out the details of that, because I read through our documentation and got myself very confused. So it was tricky. Colin Maharaj says he's just joined. Colin, yeah, there'll be some homework because of this tardy slip. And Avidia says yes, zero config mobile. It's better than SQLite. Yes. Well, I'm not saying it's better, because I think that's wrong for me to say that one thing is better than another, because there are use cases for every single scenario you can get where it is better or worse depending on what you're doing. And I don't want to say that SQLite, there's nothing wrong with SQLite. I'm just saying there are advantages to Interbase. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at this. Okay, so the database I'm talking about right now is called Interbase. And there are three ways of connecting to this. One of them is to have a local server. So you can see this is my local machine here. And my local server is called GDS_DB. There's a little bit of a reason why this is called GDS, and I forget what, for the life of me, what it was. But anyway, there's some reason why it used to be called GDB back in the day. I've got some databases on here, and as you can see, if you want more info about Nexus DB, check the conferences and webinars replay. Yes, yeah, I will be doing more about Nexus DB later, which we can also connect with, by the way. So yes, here are my local databases that I've got connect up. So DB Demos is just a demo database. That's a test database that I was connecting to just to see how it worked whilst I was doing some things, because I had to refresh my memory on all the things I need to do, because in order to do these webinars, I need to kind of understand the topic very thoroughly. And then my database for today, which is IB Webinar. Okay. If we look at this, IB Console comes free with RAD Studio. It's included in various versions of RAD Studio, and it's a bit like Heidi SQL, if you've ever heard of that project. And it's a bit like most other database things, like MySQL Desktop, which is a workbench, sorry, I think that's what they call it. It's a tool for, first of all, managing your databases when they're on a server, which is what this is, but also creating them and running queries and testing things. Now, Today, I'm going to show you something that doesn't actually need any of this. Okay, I set this up to show you that in the background, Interbase is a full client server database, a full server. It is so robust, and I'm not exaggerating here. Interbase is described as zero config and zero maintenance, and it's so good that some, not all, some versions of the aeroplane black boxes, the things that they record the data from the wings and the ailerons on a plane, and the voice recorder, which actually works in a slightly different way. It uses a metal coil, but some of the black boxes use Interbase in the background for that technology. The reason is that it just works and it's fault tolerant, all the rest of it. Not all of them. There are lots of different manufacturers of those black boxes, but when a plane crashes and there's nothing left, quite often the only thing they can grab hold of is the black box. It looks like someone kicked it down a flight of stairs and smashed it with a hammer, but they managed to get the voice recorder out and things like that. That's the kind of thing you're looking at. Interbase is rock solid hardcore. Now, IB Console is a tool that allows you to do all sorts of things for your databases. Now, how do the databases stored? Let me just move my cursor over here for a second. And I'm going to pull this over. So on my local machine, which is operating as a server at the moment, I have some databases there, okay? And they are Interbase, so they end in .ib in the background. And let me see what chat question is. Yes, Doug. Yeah, good point. I'm going to talk about change views in a moment. So here are the actual physical files themselves. And if the server's not running, you can copy that around. And as I said before, this is the problem with some databases, not Interbase, if you've got it set up right, that if you can get hold of those files, you can do something with them. So it's quite important for data protection to have these files protected, so that if you've got confidential data in, or it's a requirement to be secure, it's got some information. I mean, even just information that's not private, but it contains, say a list of customer data that you don't, sales leads or something like that, you don't want your competitors to see. It might be that it doesn't contain any personally identifying information, but it might contain sales leads and facts and figures that you don't want your competitors to see. So it's quite important to actually have that thing encrypted, because as you can see, if you know where to look, it's the same in MySQL and SQL Server. You can go and get these physical databases. Okay, and Florian has pointed out GDS stands for Groton Database. Back when it was written by Jim Starkey and Anna Howson. Yes, correct. Thanks a lot, Florian. You've either Googled that or you know more than I do. I did know this. I just forgot. Interbase originally was written by someone else and then taken over. The other thing that Interbase contains is something very, very useful, and that's what's called Interbase change views. Now, if I go on here and I make a change to the database, okay, so I go in and I log on to the database and I do something to this data that you see here. Someone else that's connected to it, you can decide whether you're going to have what's called a subscription to the changes, so that you might want to only look at the data as a snapshot, as it was at that point in time. Okay, and you might not want to do that. What you might want to do is, before you go and do some updates or write some information or something like that, you might want to go through and say, hey, what just recently changed? And a change view is that information that Interbase implements. And someone was mentioning Fiber there and saying, oh, it's better than Interbase. No, it's not true, actually. It is. It doesn't support change views. They're a patented technology of Interbase and Embarcadero, and Fiber does not support those. Also, the encryption is not supported either as well. They are slightly different. They do emulate some of the technology, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but not the same. It's saying that it's better than Interbase is incorrect. But here's one of the features which is change views. When we do a desktop app with Delphi, we want to embed easily database if the solution is here. Thank you, Ian. Good. Yes, I'm going to show you that now. Okay. Let's go through and show you what we can do. So let's first of all just talk about the change, the IB console. I'm just going to show you what it can do, just so you get the general gist of it. So I've got two tables in this database, one called newsfeed and one called users, because later on in this series, I'm going to actually recreate the Facebook feed way of doing things. Right now, it's a very kind of low-end copy. Please teach it in maximize my screen. My screen is maximized. I'm not quite sure what it means. But if we go into here, here are the properties of the database. So these are the fields I've got in this database. It supports all the kind of fields you would expect. The only thing it doesn't do is include auto increment fields. They are achieved using a technique that allows you to have like a trigger that says, okay, every time you create a new record, then we'll update this user ID to something else. If I go into here, I can view the data. If I want to, I can look into here, and here's all the information that would create that table, and set that information up. Someone's trying to ping me on my phone. Go away. There you go. So you can run this script somewhere else, on another server or something like that. This is common to most databases out there. MySQL does it, SQL Server does it, and all the rest of it. Permissions, with Interbase, you can set granular permissions. So you can, and again, this is common to most database systems out there. So you can do a similar thing with MySQL and SQL Server and Postgres. All of them support it. Postgres kind of walks its own path when it comes in terms of how you link to the data, but it's the same thing. Paul Dardo says, what's the default password for SysDBA? Trying to follow along in IB console. Master key, MASTER key in uppercase. Actually, if you Google that, you'll find it. So anyway, there's the data. And I've got 10 records in there at the moment. And if I want to, in IB console, just so that I can go and do some other things, I can go in here and I can actually play around with some queries. So I can say, oh, I'll have that query and execute it, and back comes there. And if I decided instead to say select from users where user ID is greater than 4, I think that would work. Did I? I can't remember. I've got called you. Yeah. So my user ID is greater than 4. So general, just being able to fiddle around with it, test out some theories, all the kind of things is there. And Coders is sat, and actually Coders, you're going to love me in a moment, which is, he says, one of the reasons it doesn't use IB Lite is that creating a database at runtime is not straightforward, which is something that can easily be done with SQLite. Not true. If you use FireDAC, there's a little box that you can tick that says create. And if you do that, it will actually create the database for you. Fred, phone up. Don't yeah, I see that in the chat. That's not true. You can actually just tick a box and it'll create the database for you. It's not difficult. It's fairly easy to do. Who is pinging me here? Yeah, I've told them to go away. Right. So enough about that. All I really wanted to do was show you that there are capabilities that you can get working. Where's my mouse? Over here. There you go. Okay, so let's look at a demo of doing something with that thing. Now, what I've done is I've created a project group here, okay, and it's got three projects in here. The reason is there's more than one way to access interbase data and to do things with it. Because we're going to do a mobile app, I'm going to start by showing the thing that you can do with the Pro or Community Edition, okay, which is this project here. So what I've got is a project that uses Interbase Express, and I've got another project that uses FireDAC, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then I've got another project that actually is going to create some data and do some things with the data. Okay, so what does that form look like? Well, it looks like this. And what I've done is I've got a binding list on here. And in the background, I've got a data module. And the data module looks like this. So if I press F11, you should be able to see if I just hide my QR code, because it's in the way, go away, QR code. You should be able to see that there's some properties in here. Okay. We are going to use Interbase Embedded. Okay. If I wanted to, I could say server and connect to a server as well, but we're talking about embedded databases. Okay. What's the database? Well, at the moment, it's going to be local on my machine. But on a mobile device, you want it to be somewhere else. So what I have in the background is I've got some code here that says if you're using iOS and Android, which is what this says here, then we're actually going to change the database name to point to the documents path, which is a special area on your mobile device where we're going to store the database. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment, where the database is embedded into your app. Okay. The username and password, I'm actually, you can't connect to this server, but if I just click on username, what that does is it's got an include file here, and the username password's in there. So, I'm going to get rid of this after the webinar just in case, but you shouldn't be able to connect to it. It's not really possible. So let's see what this app does, okay? And then we'll talk about how we made it do it, and then we'll talk about the differences with the other app. So again, the only components we're using is an IB table, TIB table. I hope you can see that okay on my screen there. And that is from the palette where it says IB table, Interbase. You can go down to the Interbase section and choose IB table. Now, with Interbase, you should always use a transaction. It's just the way that it's set up, okay? And that allows you to isolate your changes from other people's changes, and also changes within your own app in different areas. The bind source we'll talk about in a moment, because it's a FireMonkey app and they don't have data-aware controls. On here, I've got a grid, and then I'll talk about the other components in a second. So let's run this. Connect up. Doing some stuff in the background, and here's my app. So as you can see, I'll call it users, because you remember our IB console app where we were we got a database called users. Connect to that, and it's pretty instantaneous, as you might imagine, because there's only 10 records. And if I click on one of those records, I'm going to do that now, it comes up with the details. Now, those details are from just trying to see where my IB console is. I think I closed it actually, but the field is the username, first name, last name, and then I've got a field called biography, and that's just a memo box with some information in. And if I go back to here and choose this one, you can see it says first name 3. If I change this to say first name 3rd instead, and then go back to here, disconnect. So I'm now disconnected. I'm going to connect again and then go back into here. Oh, didn't save it. What did I do wrong there? Maybe I made this read only in my demo. I don't think I did. Perhaps I did. Did I? No. Bit of a flaw in the logic of my program there. But anyway, Mickey Mouse program doesn't really do anything special, but you get the general gist of it. Now, let's go back into the app and see how that works exactly. So I have a data module because it's just easier to have the data module set up that way. The data module is pointing to this database. Now, as I said, at runtime in the FireMonkey app, we changed that to point to something else. You can go into here. Oops, let me click on the right part of the screen. Click on my console thing. Go into here, and you can change some settings in here. I've set these to say placeholder because if I send the source code out to someone, I don't want them to be able to see what my username and password is. And so I actually, set the user name and password up in the app itself. But that's something you would probably obfuscate. In other words, you would encrypt. But there are other ways of doing that. I'm not going to go into it, but you can set the user up so that it's matches a known username, and then the app can be allowed or disallowed. You can give them different permissions and all sorts of things like that. The database only has one thing, which is the embedded. The transaction is linked to the database. Then I have a table. Now this is a database table just like any of the other database tables you're used to. And if I go into the fields editor, you can see here are the fields, and these are the fields that actually correspond to actual database fields in the database. So the field name is user ID. The first name is called, the field name for the first name is first name. But I actually want to display the display label to say username. Same with the user ID. I could change that display label to say ID, which I have, rather than user ID. So it's a bit more user friendly. Okay. Now, the only other thing I have on here, which is a bit weird, is this thing that's called a bind source. And the reason is that in a FireMonkey app, you don't have data aware controls. If I just go into my tab control, so that you can see the architecture of how I've got the app set up, there is an edit box, which I've made it align to the client, and I've made it have some margins so that it's got gaps around it that are a certain size. And you'll see that there's nothing that says data source and data field, unlike VCL. Okay. So how do I get those to work? Well, there is a thing called a bindings list, and the bindings list will say, okay, the data source is my data modules database, a bind source, and the columns that I'm linking to is, in this case, first name, and that is linking, and the control I'm linking to is the first name edit. So if we just go back here, this is called username edit and then first name edit. And in the bindings list, if I choose username, the username field in the database is linked to the username edit. Now, the other way you might have seen other people doing this is where you say, bind visually. And what you'll get is a graph like this. And you can literally drag and drop parts of your screen, so edit boxes and all the rest of it, and point them towards fields in the database. Okay. Now, I actually haven't done it that way. I've done it manually, but it's the same principle. So if we go back to the tab control again, we're just going to go back to the bio tab. That was a memo box. And again, I've stretched the memo box by saying align to client, excuse me, and then and got some margin so that it's not, looking weird, and so on and so forth. So that's all right, but you might be skeptical and say, well, that's all well and good, but there's only 10 records. Well, let's have a look at another tool, another program. I've got one here that I've called FireMonkey Interbase Creator. Okay. And what this does is it actually shares the data module with the actual app that I'm fiddling about with myself. It's got some extra things. This just saves the position of the form. So if I just open this up for a second and hit F12, I've got a module there that what that does is it uses a thing called a class helper to load the form's previous location. And when you go to close the form, it will save the position of the previous location. The reason is this screen that I'm on at the moment, the one that I'm circling my mouse on, is actually not my main screen. And I actually want the app, when it opens and runs, to appear on this screen so that you can see it, because my other screen is the one where I've got all my broadcast software on, and the app by default would open on that because that's how Windows works. But anyway, so what have we got? Well, we've got a similar kind of thing. There's a memo box here and some style components, which we'll talk about in a moment. Okay. And then some switches to control whether it's dark mode or light mode, because I've included in that helper a thing to set up dark mode and light mode, which is fairly easy, and store it. And then a button. Now the button here looks at this value, and what it does is when I click on it, it will go away. It will run a task called add records, which is just a straightforward procedure, nothing difficult about it. It goes off and it creates a bunch of records. Now, the number of records it creates in the database is dependent on this. So if I just run this for a second. Come on, computer, you can do it. I know I'm streaming at 4K, 1K, or whatever it is, but you can come up. So you see it's remember the position. If we want to just swap to light mode, we can do that. Oh, we'll have light mode on so you can see it a bit better. How many records should we create? Let's create 100 for now. Okay. Ready? I've got a little timer that will time how long it takes. Boom. It's created 100 records in 0.3 seconds. Not that fast. Let's do it again. It's got quicker. The reason is that although this is an embedded database, because don't forget I'm using the embedded version, it caches this query and has everything prepared, has all the data ready to go, and it now takes 0.07 seconds. Pretty good. Well, that's not much of a test. So let's do 1,000 records. 0.28 seconds. Let's get adventurous and let's produce 10,000 records. Now, I know how long this takes. It takes about 1.6 seconds. Okay. With these databases, is there an offline mode? If the user loses connection, the data is still safe? Yes, it's. This is a question here. I'm just going to make that come up on the screen. It's a good question. Marco, it is effectively in offline mode all the time. So there are different properties. The one I'm showing you is completely offline. So it's embedded, it's local, and if the user doesn't actually need a connection, it's local. It's a local database. But if you're using the server, there are some very interesting ways of doing this to make this. I'll answer your question in a moment, Swift Expat. There's very interesting fallback here that you can set the server up and say, push everything immediately, get all the changes to the server immediately. If that's taking, 0.2 seconds, then it's not too bad. But what if it takes 5 seconds to do? And I can show you something that takes 5 seconds, because here is, we're going to create 10,000 records. Let's now create, 50,000 records. Ready, go. So 5 times as many, so I'm expecting it to be just under 10 seconds. I'm not quite sure how long it takes. Yeah, There you go. So actually, it was double the time. But these records are set to go straight to the database there and then. There is a fallback mode, and I don't want to go into the details of that now, but you can make it so that if your connection dies, it keeps a cache of it, and then once the connection comes back again, it will then update the view. But you can also set it and say, Rick says, success, do 1 million. You know what? I won't do 1 million, but let's do 500,000, see if it works. I didn't test this, but I'm expecting it might time out because I put a timeout in the program for the thread. Let's see. That's 500. No, it's 100,000. Is that 1 million? I'm not sure. Oh, actually, I've set it to a maximum. That's why it's doing it. Yeah, I can't do 1 million at the moment. But anyway, it's if you set your timeout properly, yeah, I'll do 1 million. It'd take longer. It'd probably take like 20 seconds or something. But even so, it's still pretty good to cache this and get it here. Like I say, so just to go back to that previous question, is there an offline mode? Yes, there is. Oh, there you go. Did it in 27 seconds. So that's how many records? That's 100,000. So I'm guessing 1 million is going to probably break the timeout limit because I think I set a maximum on this this control here. You could do 1 million. It would probably take like a couple of minutes or something like that to do. But yeah, why not? It can do it. Now don't forget this is a desktop app, so it's interesting. Now Swift Expat and Patrick Premontan has just answered that question. What packages have to be installed to get the table component? Okay, so let me just close that app for a second because I think we've kind of actually let's just hold on. Let's set this to 1,000 and just create that for a second. There you go, 1,000 in 0.76 seconds. So we're going to close that for a second. I'll show you exactly where you can get these from. So if I go to what is it? Platform. It's called configure tools. No, hold on. Manage features. There you go. I knew it was something. Doesn't help. I'm looking at a weird angle here. So to get those interbase components here, you need to make sure that you've chosen this in your setup. If you haven't got it already, you saw what I did. I went to tools, and in fact, I'll do it again because I actually wasn't very swift with it. Go to tools and then manage features. It'll take a few seconds because you've got to have a think about it. Thanks, Patrick. Yes, manage features, very good. And then go down to here, and it's this section here, Interbase Express. If you don't have that, it could be that you've got a version that is, like a weird trial or something like that. But most people, I think, Pro, and so CE version, Community version, and Pro upwards will definitely have these. I'm going to talk about those on the slides in a moment. And then the other thing that you get is, I think this only comes to the Pro version, not Community, is Interbase 2020 Developer Edition. What that allows you to do is come up with that IB console that I've got and test a few things out. So anyway, so that's how you get those components. Now, if we go back to our previous app, which I showed you, and just run that again. Connect. Immediately connected. You remember we've just created 1,000 records, and there's the 1,000 records. Go to the 997th, and it's immediate. Okay, so that is an embedded database. Now, one thing that is difficult with SQLite is scrolling backwards through a data set. Forward only trigger, forward only, what do they call it? Cursors. But Interbase doesn't do that. It's full, bi-directional. You can set it up to say unidirectional, which helps with the performance on some things. But as it stands, by default, it's bidirectional, so it goes both ways. Now, that's all well and good. That's the interbase stuff, which is great. So let's just close that. Let's have a look at another way of doing it. Okay. Now, this version is and so actually, Paul, I didn't know this. Thanks for letting me know that, Paul, because it's not something I knew. Interbase 2020 Developer Edition is present on CE. So the Community Edition, completely free. You can get it if you go to our product page, go to here, scan this link that you see in the top corner, the top right hand corner there. Go there, download the Community Edition as long as you qualify. So there are some restrictions on the license there. If you are earning a certain amount as a developer or your company on a company network, then you need to buy the Pro Edition at least. Community Edition is basically the same as a Pro. The difference with the Pro is you get a license with it that allows you to do all sorts of extra things. So anyway, so thanks for that, Paul. That's good to know. Right, so let's look at this app. So this app is another app that's very similar. If I pull up the user interface, you'll see that it looks almost the same. The only thing that I haven't got is that the tab, there's only 2 tabs. There's not the additional tabs for the biography because I didn't want to make it too complicated. But if I go here, then there's the username and first name and last name. And if we go back to here, this is the list box. And again, exactly the same thing as before, identical. I've mapped the database components, which is again on a data module, into here. Now, what's different about this version is that the database module, I'm going to show you how you don't need to do database commands to do that. So in here, slightly different components. You remember before that it was called IB something, so Interbase Express. These ones, which you can't really see that well on here, but this says TFD connection. So this is using FireDAC. And the FireDAC components are in here. So if I say FD table, for example, here's a FireDAC FD table. Now, if you have the Pro version, you will have FireDAC on there, but with the Pro version, you can only connect to local databases and embedded databases on mobile. Okay. For the if you want to connect to a client server box using FireDAC, then you need to have the enterprise version upwards. That's the main difference. Apart from that, everything you see here is identical, and it's exactly the same. Now, one thing that Coders there was asking about creating databases is this screen here. Let me pull this over. Okay, so you see where this is open mode. Okay, can you see there's an option down here that says open or create and create? So what these do is that if you go and read the help, it will tell you to that if you select this, it will actually create the database if it doesn't exist. Then once you've done that and it's created the empty database, then as Patrick says, you can go in and you can do FD query or FD script to use SQL to manage your databases. Now, if you remember earlier on, we had the IB console. I'm going to pull that back up again, like so. Come on, computer. What was I going to say? Yes, you remember if we go to the database and go to here, I think I have to log on actually. Log in. So if I go to here and then select, I can't remember what the password is. What did I call it? Please stand. There you go. I should have known that. This is a webinar. That's my little password for now. So I go back to here and I select this. And this is the webinar. Connect. If you remember when we went to the tables and we went to here, do you remember where we selected metadata and I told you about the metadata? Okay. If you've got an FD script component set up and you've got that previous setting that I just showed you where it says or create, it will create a database. So it'll create that database on the hard disk. If you remember, I showed you this earlier on. Hold on. So it'll create that file for you, the ib_webinar.ib with nothing in it. It'll just be an empty database with no information in it. And then what you can then do is run the script, and that will actually add the tables in. So there's a two-step thing there. First of all, you need to have the connection set so that you can say create, and then create that database empty for you. And then you can run a script like this using the FT script. But that's kind of beyond what we're talking about here at the moment. People are pinging me on my thing saying, "What are you doing?" Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. Goodbye. Right, so that will create a database. So again, just go into here. Whoops, no, go into here. That connection editor, and then open mode. Instead of saying open, which is the default, you can say open or create, and it'll create an empty database for you, and then you can run scripts to do what you like in there. Now, what's quite important here is the other thing, which is, first of all, I'm trying to show you that these are FireDAC components. So they're very slightly differently, but pretty much the same thing. Okay. And Patrick says, if you need samples about how to manage that on GitHub, contact me for the links. Yes. Go to Patrick's site and he'll show you how to do that. Patrick's a very, very good MVP and our Spirit of Delphi award winner, which is why he's a good MVP, because we like him. But apart from that, even though this is FireMonkey and FireDAC instead of Interface Express, you can now run the app. So let's just run that app again. Different app, not the same app as the one you just saw. It was going to look the same, but you remember the first one had that biography thing in so that you could see the difference. Okay, and this one is FireDAC. Now, Interface Express, in my test, it was slightly quicker using Interface Express than it was FireDAC. But once the FireDAC app had, whoops, it helps if you can see it, doesn't it? Once FireDAC app is connected, then it's actually very quick to run. But it's just a slight difference in the performance was the only thing I noticed. And I think that's the initial load. Like I said, the first time it ever loads up the database. The Interface Express one, which is the other app, is fast out of the box. So this is FireDAC, and the other one was Interface Express components. Now you might ask yourself, that's great, but what about the embedding part of the actual app? How do you embed that database? Okay, so let's just go back to our first, very first app that I showed you. And let's pull up the data model. And if you remember, I said that we can either have it locally, or if it's running an Android, we actually get it to go to a path. We say, oh, don't open it on the local machine, and open it embedded in the iPhone app. And by the way, when I say iPhone app, I'm not joking. If I just open this and go down to here, here is the app. It looks a little bit weird because of the resolution of my screen. I normally run it bigger, but there is the Android version of it, but all scaled properly the way it should be. If you're using layouts the way I've shown you before in previous webinars, then everything will scale nicely and it will look gorgeous. Okay. So how do I get that database onto my phone so that it's embedded? We go up to project and we choose deployment. Okay. And you need to add a couple of things. First of all, if you go down to here where it says add featured files, click on this and you need to have the interbase to go a library. Okay. There is an IB Lite one and there's also an interbase client, but for what I'm showing you today, I'm showing you an interbase to go. And don't forget, it's free. It's free for you to use on mobile. If you want to use desktop, then there's a license for it. But for just regular to go mobile apps is completely free. There's some other libraries you can add here, but anyway, we tick that and say that's what we want to do. And what that will do is that will add some of these DLLs in here, depending on what we're at. Now, at the moment, we're using the Windows platform, but let's go back to the all configurations and look at the Android one. So in amongst these files, you will see somewhere, maybe I should have just narrowed it down to just Android. Let's do that. Let's get Android. Android 64-bit, I think this was it. Yeah, so you start to see a couple of things. First of all, this is the admin DB, which is part of it. The other thing I did was I added, so I went into here and said, add a file like this. I went down to where my databases are, which on my machine is in here. And I picked the ibwebinar.ib file, which is the database I want to embed in my app or deploy with my app. Okay. And then I need to say where I'm going to send it. Now, if I click in here, that IB webinar, by default, it's in here. For Android, I want to have this additional file loaded into ./asset/internal. You can choose other paths. If you Google it, you'll see where the file needs to go. It's different iOS to Android, but it's the same principle. I can also include any other file. So let's say you want to include some kind of PDF document or some random file that you want your Android app to have. You can also do that here for those kind of files. It doesn't have to be interface related. The deployment place is where you add any extra files that you need. So I don't know, CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet or some other random nonsense, whatever you want. But that's how to do it. So just to recap, how did I do that? I went to project, okay, and I went to deployment. I did two things. The first thing I did was said add feature files, and I chose the interbase to go driver. Okay, that adds a whole bunch of stuff in here. You'll see when it happens, like this registered file for the IB Lite, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then I picked the database, went to the database file and added that and made sure that it was going to the right place in the remote path. Okay. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Once you do that, once you say deploy and you deploy it to your, excuse me, deploy it to your mobile device, it'll automatically be on your mobile device and it will work just the same as anywhere else. Embedded database. Now, I am going to summarize this in a web page. It's not going to be today because I'm too busy today. But on Monday, I should have it summarized so that you'll see that. The link is the one that I showed in the slides. Ralph says, we use this kind of DB base over years for dog management software and for sub-metering tools. All updates with every software release were done with the query and script components. There you go. So the components that he's talking about is when you go to the palette and you look for the either the interbase components where they've got script and SQL, and just Google them. Look, just hit F1 and you have a look. Interbase admin that allows you to do all sorts of fantastic things there. Configuration, so you can configure an instance. If you've got the license for the full client server version, and again, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, then you can do all sorts of amazing things. If you're using FireDAC, which I really do recommend you do, then you can do the same thing, same bit of code with FireDAC will actually connect to SQL Server, MySQL, MongoDB, etc., etc. It's all abstracted, as we would say, so that the same principles work. You do need a few little tweaks. It's not 100% easy, but that's it. It's as simple as that. So just to recall, let's go back to here. I hit F12. The actual code that's doing anything here is actually relatively straightforward. So, when you hit the connect button, it connects to the database. If it's already connected, then it closes it. And if it isn't closed, if it isn't already open, then it opens it. And if that's successful, then it changes the button to say disconnect. Then it does a little bit of fiddling around with the size and styles of some of the settings. So the grid's a little bit quirky when it comes to fiddling around with column headers and row size and things like that. If it's on Windows, then when you close the app, it will save the form location. By the way, this is open source, this stuff. All this code that does all this kind of stuff is, you can get it. It's all open source. I provide it, and I'll have a link in the blog post when I do the blog post. Save the location. When we first create the form, we load the previously stored location, and then we also do a couple of things with what the columns are for the rows and things like that. This source code will be up on the web, and you'll be able to play around with it and test it. How does that look? Once again, just to refresh your memory, go into here. This is the FireDAC version, I think. At this moment, it's loading the form location. It's not connected, so the connect button has got the default connect on it. Now it's connected. If I click on an item, it goes to changes the tab view to go to the next view. And if I click on this button, it changes the tab view to go to the biography section. I want to go back, so that tab button, that back button on there, says, oh, well, you're on the biography tab, so we'll go back to the details tab. And if I click back on here, it goes back to the list tab. As simple as that. Now, obviously, your user interface would be much more complicated than this. I try and keep it as simple as possible so that you can see what's happening fairly easily without lots of complicated code. But it's easy stuff, and that's the power of Interbase. SQLite, some of these things, I'm not going to knock SQLite. There's nothing wrong with SQLite. Billions of people around the world use SQLite, and it's been around for a long time. But it has some restrictions. And there are some areas that it does not compete with Interbase. I know some people say, oh, yeah, it does. Yeah. No, it's incorrect. There are things you can do with Interbase that you can't do with SQLite, and I've shown you a few of those here. And I've got a specific webinar comparing the two later on and talking about setting. Let's have a look. And the other thing that I showed you was this app where we create the database. And so we empty the table because it already exists. And then we go off and we create some records in the table. I could do this a lot quicker. It's just using the lazy version, using a table to do this, adding a record and going around as many times as you've got that control in here and making it happen. The only little bit of trickery, I suppose you could call it in here, would be the create button, which is running a thread. So I use a task, which is one part of the system threading library, to run that asynchronously. Why do we do that? Because when we're running this app, wrong app. Sorry, hang on. Hold on. When we're running this app, we need it to be responsive. When people are doing a long database read, and it takes a while. And we're going to show that in a moment. Come on, computer. Come on, there you go. Let's choose, what was it we chose last time? 10,000 or something. If I do that, if you remember, in the old days, you would move your app around and it would not repaint properly. In fact, let's add another 0. So it takes longer. Can you see that because I'm using the thread, the app is still responsive and it doesn't do that kind of thing or go white, how you see things that say this app is not responding. Then the code that I showed you with that thread in there makes absolutely certain that this will actually keep responding, even though it's taking forever to draw this record. Sometimes a bit jaggy because that's just the way that Windows works. So yeah, it's done it. 27 seconds. Let's just do 100 and see how quick it is. It'll be so quick I probably can't grab it. Yeah, there you go. So 0.5. So to keep that responsive, it just uses, as I said before, it uses the system threading, and it creates the records in a thread. The reason is that in the interbase controls and the interbase driver are multi-thread compatible, so they will work in a thread, and you can update things in the thread, and your application will work properly and look beautiful, which is the way you need it. We did do some synchronization. All that does is just says to the operating system, oh, hang on, I'm doing something in a thread, and to avoid clashes and crashes, then I synchronize the thread and show an error message if there's something goes wrong when I post the data. Otherwise, we get into a horrible deadlock situation. Okay, so that is that. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to here, and we're going to talk about some of the questions. All right, so let me put my camera like so and embiggen myself, which should be over here actually, like that. So code is having problems creating data. Okay, coders, go to Patrick's website. Patrick, do you want to put your website? Oh, do you know what? I'm going to Google this. It's old software, isn't it? Yeah. Patrick's got some examples that are very good. I've put them in there, and actually I can also put it up here. Patrick's website. Patrick is French, but we won't hold that against him. He's a very good friend of mine. I get very, very well with him. Excellent developer, and he's got some examples there that you can go to look at creation. As he says, he's got some scripts and things like that. That's it. Right, so let me just go back to, actually I needed to share my screen still because I'm going to show the rest of my slides. Let me just up from the current slide. I don't know why it is that PowerPoint does not remember how things are set up. It's very annoying. Okay, so share my screen, go back to here and this screen and say share and turn off my camera. Okay, so that was the demo, and now we're going to talk about some basics, including a super secret special offer. And it's so special offer that actually some of the people in the company don't know about it, because I literally got told about it. So first some facts, okay? And then I'm going to get to the end and tell you how you can get things for free and get discounts and stuff like that as well. I don't normally sell stuff, by the way, and that's not how I do things, but I do want to talk about some of the offers we got, because I got a salesperson to give me some info ahead of time. So if you've got a pro license for Rad Studio or Delphi, and that's the same as the Community Edition, then you get the Interbase Express controls included. And I showed you everything I did with the FireDAC thing, I could do with the Interbase Express things. The very first demo I showed you, which had the biography on that was using Interbase Express. This allows you to connect to any database, local or server. Okay. Pro licenses cannot use FireDAC with the Interbase driver to connect to server instances of Interbase. So if you've got a server out there and it's, I showed you the IB console and it could be running on any server, just happen to be on the same machine, but it could be on some network server. If you've only got Pro, then you can't use FireDAC to connect to that server. You can connect to local, you can connect to the embedded one using the IB2Go driver, but you can't connect to server instances. So you would need to have an enterprise license. If you've got enterprise or architect, then you can connect to any type of database and any Interbase server. So there's no restrictions. And some other facts. Anyone, even if they're not using RAD Studio or Delphi or C++ Builder, can download and use IB Lite, Interbase Lite, for free as an embedded local database, so on your local machine. And that includes drivers for Python. It includes drivers for C#. I've heard that some people might use C# instead of Delphi, and C and C++ and a few others as well, .NET stuff. So if you want to use IB Lite and get some of the advantages with IB Lite, then you can download it for free. If you are a user with an enterprise or an architect license, then and it gets a bit complicated now, you can get a free license for IB2Go for mobile apps, which can connect to a local embedded database on mobile. If you want to connect to a server, you can do that on mobile as well. So there's no restriction on the IB2Go for mobiles. You can connect to server instances. If you've got enterprise or architect, bear with me, then you get a free deployment license for IB2Go as well. And you'll need to talk to sales about this because I get confused about what they're talking about. Pro users would need to purchase IB2Go, okay, for deployment. I don't understand that. Ask your salespeople. I've got some details at the moment. All users, including Pro, Enterprise, Architect, need to purchase an IB2Go license for desktop applications. So if you're going to use IB2Go and have a desktop, then you would need to purchase an IB2Go license. They're not expensive, but you do need a license for it. There's a thing called an IB2Go subscription, I think, as well. And this is a recently new thing that I don't keep up with. IB2Go provides for encryption of the database at rest for mobile, which would be free, which is a significant advantage over SQLite. In other words, you can do for free IB2Go that you can't do with SQLite out of the box. SQLite, you'd need to go and pay for an additional license. And actually, FireDAC can actually talk to that driver as well with the encryption turned on. That can do it. But with IB2Go, it's free. You get it included. IB2Go also allows embedded user security, which, as I said before, is an additional layer of security. It means that people can't take your database, guess what the password is, or see how some other password, and then connect to it using a username and password that they don't know. So if you have a login screen on your app where people log in, and that's a user embedded in the database, which is the best way to do it, they can't take that database, know what the password is because they've broken it somehow. They would then have to know what the username and the password is as well for getting access to the data. This is a double layer of security, and it's extremely important for European countries, and it's actually quite important for most scenarios in the United States as well. I can't speak about countries outside of the EU and United States, but I know there is restrictions in Brazil, for example, and I imagine there's some restrictions around the world because it's the big topic nowadays. IB Lite and IB2Go support change views, which are patented. And when someone said to me, "Oh, SQLite is good, blah blah blah," and you could use Firebird, blah blah blah. No, actually, you can't use change views. They're patented. That belongs to us, and you can only get that with IB2Go and IB Lite from us. And the change views to allow you to get a difference between what is on the database that someone else has updated whilst you've been managing your own data on your own device. So it's kind of like a delta, where you say, hey, what changed since the last time we read your database? It will tell you what the differences are. It means you cut down on the traffic between the server and the app as well, the database apps. It's very, very important. You can also subscribe to various events. So you can say, well, notify me when something happens to this particular record or group of records or anything like that. If you're a DBMS and you understand a DBA, sorry, and you understand what I mean by triggers, then subscriptions are a bit like a trigger. In other words, when something happens to a table, you can subscribe to that event, but it's much more in depth than the trigger. It does a lot more than that. Very useful. I'm going to cover that in more depth another time, but right now, Google it or go into our help and have a look. Here's a super secret info. I literally got this emailed to me quietly by the director of sales, and she said, "Oh, if you're going to do this webinar, here's the information," and that is, and this is not public yet. So you'll need to actually email a salesperson to get this, which is you can get 20% off professional, 25% off enterprise, 30% off architect. No matter what those, if you're going to pay for an Interbase server edition, you can get 25% off. So a quarter of the price, so 3/4 of the price it normally is. That's pretty good. I don't promote sales most of the time because I just, it's not my job. My job is to show you the benefits of the project and the product and how to do things. But this set of discounts, well, why not? It's you can ignore it. You can spit at me in the street. I don't know. But there you go. One important thing to notice is it does end on February the 28th. So it's after Delphi's 30th anniversary, but I'm sure you'll see this happening, but this is going to come out soon. They're going to talk about it. But if you email sales at the moment, they'll honor these details. There are some caveats. It's valid with the purchase of Rad Studio, Delphi, C++ Builder, I'm losing my voice, all of which are 12.2, and Interbase Server and To Go. So if you buy any of these, and you can get additional discounts. It doesn't count for renewals or academic licenses, unfortunately, and there may be some additional restrictions. I have to say that because, the world is full of lawyers. but you're talking about getting 20%, 25%, 30%, which is pretty good. That's it for now. I am pretty much done. You know who I am. You can email me at ian.barker@embarcadero.com. I get a lot of people email me. It's good. I'm very pleased that you do that. And people email me, and I'm going to just make myself come back up here again. People email me and ask me questions about all sorts of things to do with Delphi, Red Studio. I've had probably 20 emails in the last 2 days. Some people saying, "Oh, I've got this problem with Delphi. I don't know how to solve it. How can you do it?" I'm not here for technical support. It's not my job. But if I can help, I will do. And if I can, I'm going to just move myself up like this. Oh no, apparently I can't do that. If I don't know the answer, then I'll put you onto someone who does. And most of the time they'll help. I also have an interesting position within the company in that, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. There's my email. Note it down now whilst you've got the chance, ian.barker@embarcadero.com. I work with all levels of the company, well, from the board members downwards, literally, directors and marketing team. When you see me doing this, talking to the screen, it's very nice that people are, oh yeah, no, and stuff like that. But I want to make it clear that there's a lot of people working in the company and a lot of people that make these webinars happen. Barbara and April and Ali and all sorts of people. Producer Martha, who is still in the background, and all the rest of it. So there's a whole bunch of people. There are a lot of people in the company that can answer questions, and I will put you in touch with the right people, the PMs and all the rest of it. Coders would like, says Patrick Pramatan, could you can you have your email? Rick says Delphi on every desktop. Yes, exactly. That's the way it is. Florian says, very interesting webinar today. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll try and make them interesting. Doesn't always work. I can't, pick a topic every time that people like. But we've got some interesting stuff coming up. We are emailing you on the day that we go live. If you subscribe, we try not to spam you, but you'll get an email with all the details on. Also, there is a website that you can go to, which weirdly enough I do not have set up. So let me get that set up. Just going to create a QR code. I think I've got enough gaps to do one. Have I got one? Yeah, I can. If you go to this URL there, all the webinars are listed. I hope I haven't given out the wrong one. You just check that on. Yeah, so all the webinars are listed there, and you can register there for them. If you are watching me on YouTube, or you're watching me on LinkedIn, or you're watching me on X Live, because we go out to a lot of different things. If you're on YouTube, down there should be a subscribe button. I sound like an influencer now. I apologize. I should have green hair and blue fingernails or something. But down there's a subscribe button. Click on the subscribe button and click on the like button. We won't know who you are. Okay, we will have no idea. What it does do is when I do go live, particularly as we're planning on doing some shorts and some spontaneous videos, you'll get a notification via YouTube or LinkedIn that I've gone live, and it's useful. It just helps you it helps you so you don't miss things. But if you go to that webinar site, we've got all the topics that we've got coming up listed there, so that you are. Oh, and as Patrick says as well, there's also a streams site as well. But even so, if you go into the Rad Studio IDE, down on the right-hand side of the welcome page, there's a thing that says Learn, and those are all the videos that we've done so far within reason. I think they drop off after a certain time, but there's a whole bunch there. I'm just going to add another thing here, which is webinar site. For those of you that can't scan the URLs, which does happen, I get it. If you can't scan the QR code, you can go there and we'll give you the. Sorry, I should. Hang on. Let me do that so I got it right. Yeah. If you go there, we've got a whole itinerary of all the things we're planning. We are planning 30 webinars for 30 years of Delphi. On Tuesday, we have got a webinar for all sorts of gadgets. I'm going to show you some of this device. Whoops, I've just accidentally run my chair over my dog, one of my dogs. Devices like this. This is a Paper S3. This is a nice little device, actually. This is can't get it out now. It's something that Boyan's stuff works with. I don't think it works with this particular one, but it's a nice little device, which is a e-ink device. That's very cool, and it costs like $40 or less. I mean, I can't even remember how much it was. You plug it in, and you can program it with Delphi. You actually program it with Arduino and then talk to it with Delphi, but that's what I'm going to do. And I've got some other devices like this. This particular one is an Atom display. It's a colored display. I'm going to show you how to program that and make that do things. And if you look down behind me over here, you'll see that there. That's a hand scanner. And then down here in my bags of fun, and there's some down here as well, my shelves of doom, or whatever you want to call it, you'll see some devices here. These are fingerprint scanners, and I think there might be an eye scanner and a few other things as well. I'll show you how you can program those in Delphi, which is a very big deal. And for people, you can fire relays and stuff like that, all sorts of stuff. And the sword fighting robot is just over there. I've got to screw him together, but at least I found him. So we're going to do a bit of knife fighting robotics and see if I can accidentally cut my finger off or something. Luckily, I can't find my katana, but my Delphi sword is up here, and I've got a spear just there. That's a proper spear. So if I don't think the robot's going to be strong enough to do that, I might have to give him like a cocktail sword or something like that. But anyway, got lots of things happening, and thanks for joining us. We're going to call it a day. I will see you again next Tuesday. Every Tuesday, every Friday at the same time until the clocks change, and then it'll be an hour earlier for those in Europe at the same time for us here. And subscribe. We're not going to hassle you. If you do it on YouTube and click on like and subscribe, then, like I say, we won't know who you are. If you register for the whole series, then we will just send you emails on the day to say, by the way, don't forget, Ian's on later on today, and click on the webinar. We've got some great guests. I'm probably going to show Boyan stuff. I don't know if I will be able to organise Boyan to turn up on camera, but maybe we will. Depends on the time. He's usually in the chat and watching what's happening. But quite a lot going on, and we've got some cool stuff happening anyway. Thanks very much, and I will see you next Tuesday. Have fun. Bye-bye.